Welcome to A Pint with Seaniebee, coming to you from London. On the podcast, we've never talked really about fashion, I don't think, over all the episodes we've had. And today we're going to talk about fashion with a great guy who is an icon and a fashion guru who runs a company called the Contemporary Wardrobe Collection. He's the guy to go to if you want to know about fashion and how it has impacted on society. He used to be a mod and has a wardrobe collection upstairs, which is gargantuan. The biggest store I've ever seen, full of old clothes and jackets and cool things. He also founded the Horse Hospital, and that's where his collection is located, and we're actually recording in the Horse Hospital. And I'm welcoming Roger Burton. How are you, sir?
Morning, yes. Hi, Sean. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
We have this lovely building we're in. Tell me about the Horse Hospital. Was it actually a place where horses got sick?
It was, actually, yeah. We came across this building 25 years ago when I was looking for somewhere new to store my clothes. Lease had expired on the old building, and somebody mentioned this building, and we got the keys to have a look at it, and there was a sort of rumour that it had been a horse hospital. However, it wasn't until 10 or 15 years later, when we were having a battle with the owners about redevelopment, that my daughter and I did a thorough kind of research on the building and discovered that it actually was a horse hospital. It was originally built in 1797 by a gentleman called James Burton with the same surname, which was a bit spooky. No relation whatsoever. He was the biggest builder in London at that time, 1797. He built this entire area.
So we're in Russell Square, right in the centre.
Yeah. And
so it was probably the Queen's horses, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, not at all. No. Because we thought it was originally it would be attached to either the military or some big house or something, but no, not at all. It was for cab drivers, and so it was like a service station basically. Yeah. I mean, they never did anything more serious than stomach, mouth, and hooves, legs and feet, and that was it. Anything more serious than that, and then they were kind of put down. But it's a beautiful old building. It retains many of its original features. It's moulded concrete floor.
Yeah, amazing.
And it had a space for 12 horses on each floor. And the unusual thing is it's got internal ramps. And we took on the entire building as a project. It had been apprenticed for 100 years. It was derelict probably for 10 years. The roof had all caved in. There was like pigeons flying about, ivy everywhere. And this horrible sort of sticky substance on the floor, which turned out to be printing ink. And it took us a good 3 or 4 months just to make the place habitable.
So you fixed it up yourself?
We fixed it up,
done.
yeah.
Well done.
Me and my staff, and then we moved the collection of clothes in because we needed quite a bit of room. We got upwards of 20,000 garments up there, and decided to use the other space as an art gallery. But in order for us to announce the fact that we'd moved to this building, I had quite a large collection of punk clothing that I'd bought from Vivienne Westwood and various collectors. And so we basically had a retrospective exhibition of all this punk clothing. And that was in 1993. Which was massively successful. There was, we had loads and loads of people to see it, and I ended up taking the exhibition to Japan, and it was even more successful out there. And this kind of set a precedence for the building. I've always had this sort of punk kind of ethos, as it were, DIY, and so I've encouraged untrained artists and because I was untrained myself, to do things here, basically.
Well, it's wonderful considering its location, and long may it continue to be kept as a community thing that it is. So you have this 20,000 massive collection upstairs. You started your life as a collector, not of clothes. But tell me about you were born on a farm, is that right?
That's right. I was born. My parents were farmers. Up in Leicestershire,
in
a little village called Burton, another weird thing.
No relation.
No relation. Yeah. It's quite a common name, isn't it?
Richard Burton, no relation.
No relation.
Burton's Biscuits, no relation.
No. Sadly, no. But yeah, no. I left school when I was 15. Went to work on the farm. My dad rented a farm. I think it was about 200 acres. cattle and sheep and a bit of arable and so on and so forth. But he died when I was quite young. I was 11, in fact.
Oh, no.
So basically, we had to give up the farm. But because that was the only thing I knew, when I left school at 15, I went to work for a local farmer. But it was a time when 1964, when there was a great interest in clothing, and I'd gone to school in a suburb of Leicester called Seaniebee, Leicester was a very rich city. In fact, it was the richest city in Europe at that time, through its hosiery and boot and shoe trade and so on. And so everything that was available in London, you could get in Leicester as well. And there were some great clubs there and so on. So all my mates, they were all kind of, dressing in this latest mod style. And
the Beatles, of course, would have been.
Yeah, of course,
And
I wanted a bit of that. But of course, I was working on the farm, like getting £4 or £5 a week and having to work extra hours just to make up the money and so on. But I loved the life, and I stuck it out for a couple of years, and then eventually I thought, okay, this is crazy. I'm still earning £5 a week, and my mates are earning £25 a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a proper job.
Yeah.
So I got a job in a factory driving a crane. In a company in Leicester that built earth moving and crushing materials.
Right, rotavators and that.
Yeah, and so I got a job there and stuck that out for a couple of years, and then thought, you know what, I need to be free. I need to be. So
were you creative as well as a kid, or do you remember?
Yeah, I used to draw a lot.
Right. Okay.
Definitely used to draw a lot, and I was always kind of doing DIY stuff, and it coincided with my mum. She'd managed to somehow buy the farmhouse, but it was way too big. It was only her and me that were living there, and I was about to move, and she wanted to downsize, get a little cottage somewhere. Of course, it was full of antique furniture and antiques and stuff that had accumulated over the years.
Was it a family farm through generations? Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
And so I started to restore some of this stuff and sell it off, like to friends and neighbours, and I think we put some stuff in auction and so on and so forth. And I was very interested in antiques in general. So I was doing that as a sort of sideline, and I was cleaning windows and mowing lawns and delivering coal and chopping logs and turkeys at Christmas. And
do you remember it being a happy time?
It was a fabulous time, yes. It was a really good, I had a nice girlfriend, and it was all, I was still into the clothes and the music, and it was great. It was really, I had a really good time. And then I actually got a stall on Leicester Market, first of all doing sort of antiques and stuff, and then there was a lot of interest in, after the mod thing had kind of fizzled out around 1966, there was obviously the next thing to come in was the hippie thing, and I didn't really want to be a hippie. I didn't really appeal to me. I loved the music, but I didn't like the look of it. And so there was a local band called Family who started dressing in all this kind of 1930s gangster gear, and I thought, I'll do a bit of that.
Spiv stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Leicester Market was a great place to buy it, and so I really got into that look, and me and my girlfriend used to dress up in like 1930s stuff, and
all this stuff would have been coming in from Chicago and New York, from just boats going over and back at the time.
Well, no, most of it was English stuff.
Oh, was it?
At that time,
the London Spiv,
yeah. It was
that.
Pre-war and post-war kind of demob suits and all that sort of stuff. Bit of American stuff, and. I really kind of, lived a life. I got really interested in vintage cars and bought a 1936 Humber, dressed it up with white wall tyres, and it had running boards, I thought it was like Al Capone driving about in this.
Yourself and your girlfriend like Bonnie and
Clyde. And I got a shop in Leicester and decided to open this antique shop called Pioneer And this must have been like 1969, I guess, and it was a time when strip pine was all the rage.
Right.
And old advertising signs and pub mirrors and all that business. So I set up this shop and did all that. And
so you're only about 20, are you, at this stage? Or?
Yeah. And I used to have...
you're a big entrepreneur.
I used to have a rail of vintage clothing, 1930s stuff. And it really kind of was a bit ahead of its time for Leicester. Mm-hmm. But what happened was dealers used to come up from London and buy the furniture and the old advertising, and I'd spend most of the week travelling around, tearing down old advertising signs from buildings around the Midlands and the North, and then selling them to these dealers that would come up at the weekends. And then I suppose I'd been doing this for like 3 or 4 years, and I was travelling backwards and forwards to Birmingham, and there used to be something called the Rag Market in Birmingham, which was like a weekly thing where I'd go and buy clothes, and I met up with this guy over there who'd been a mod as well, and we were the same sort of age, and we ended up going to partnership. He had a stall in a flea market over there, and we were doing the same sort of thing. We thought we'd combine our forces, and some people from Leicester that I'd known had gone into partnership in London and opened up a shop called Acme Attractions, the basement of Antiquarius, which was the place to buy your vintage clothes and objects and so on. They'd started this thing, and they were selling vintage jukeboxes and vintage clothes, and they were doing rather well. This would be probably 1974 or 5. Mm-hmm. And anyway, they asked us if we could supply them with, a regular stream of clothes. So I started to go back to the old places where I was buying my gangster suits and stuff. And there was a store in Leicester called Wakefield's, which was an old Army Navy store. Mm. Twice a year, they would always on the pavement. They would have a rail of like demob suits and stuff. And I went in there one day and I said to the manager, "Look, have you got any more of these suits? Because we'd be interested in taking them off your hands." And he was a bit reluctant to start with, but eventually he took me upstairs, and there was like a room just stacked with cardboard boxes of brand new, old stock, dead stock clothing.
Yeah.
Menswear, mostly menswear, shirts, ties, suits, jackets, trousers. It was mostly for workmen, basically, Anyway, these started to go down really well. So we'd load up with all this stuff and drive down to the King's Road and sell a bunch off to our mates in the Antiquarius. But then other shops on the King's Road started to get interested as well. So we started selling to them, and every Friday we'd go down there and open up the back of the van, and people would queue up to buy all this dead stock.
So you're building a bit of an empire.
And the demand was quite strong actually, and then we started selling internationally. This Japanese couple got to hear about us, and they were interested in taking stuff to Japan. They got 3 shops in Tokyo, right. And they'd take anything we'd got.
Shinjuku kind of stuff.
That's right, yeah. And so we started to think, we need to be finding more of this stuff. And so my partner and I discovered that the old Wakefield store in Leicester, there was 90 branches of them around the North and the Midlands. So we decided to visit every single one and hope that they would come up with the goods. Most of them
didn't. Did you think of buying them?
Huh? Yeah.
Could have bought Wakefield's, a reverse takeover.
But and it got us very interested in northern towns, and particularly places like Leeds, which was a big suiting manufacturer back in the day. And then one day I found, because I used to, I don't know, I was a real purist at the time. You had to look the part.
But explain to my overseas listeners what a mod was back then.
Well, I mean, a mod, I suppose, back in, in 64, 66, one would... There were different categories of mods.
Yeah.
There was the well-known kind of scooter, Fred Perry, Parker wearing mod. But I was more interested in wearing a suit because it was a big thing for me to be able to buy a suit. And so I'd wear like a mohair suit, maybe a button-down shirt or a tab collar shirt and a slim tie, always had a pocket handkerchief, raincoat over the arm, couldn't afford a suede coat. Oh, I desperately wanted a suede coat. So that was the look that I went for. And then in a more casual state, I'd wear shrink-to-fit Levi's, denim jacket, 501s, desert boots, and that.
Well, we have to say the 501s are probably the most enduring and iconic piece of men's fashion. Well,
absolutely. I've just been involved in curating a mod exhibition up in my hometown of Leicester at the museum. Right. It was interesting because I've been doing a series of talks up there, walking around the show and explaining stuff to people. Of course, one of the things I talk about at Levi 501s.
Yeah.
There was a shop in Leicester, strange enough, called the Irish Manufacturing Company. But they were the first shop in Leicester in 1963 to import shrink-to-fit Levi's.
Really?
Everybody had to have a pair.
I know the guy who runs Levi's in America.
Oh, really?
I think he still does. Chip Berg is his name.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there's an interesting little story for him, if he's listening. John, anyway, his name was. We used to know him as John Irish. He came along to one of my talks, and I was explaining about the Irish manufacturing, selling the first Levi's, and he said, "I've got something to add to that." He said, we were the first people to do it, and they were selling like hotcakes, until one day this young girl came in, and she said, "I bought this pair of Levi's and I shrunk them, and I can't get in them." She said, "Because I should have."
She overshrunk them.
Well, no,
you're supposed to wear them.
You're supposed to buy the next size up and shrink down to your size.
Okay.
And she somehow missed that, and so she bought this. She brought them back and she wanted her money back. And he said, "Well, I'm not sure about that." He said, but anyway, he had to think about it, and he thought, "Well, okay, maybe I can sell them. I can just put them on, as ready shrunk." There was so much interest in this pair of jeans that him and his assistant went down to the local laundrette, and I'm talking 1963 here. They went down to the laundrette with 100 pairs of Levi's and chucked them in the laundrette and pre-washed them. And he said, "You know what? They sold just like that
for more money."
And
so Levi's didn't come up with that idea.
No. Well, no. Well, that was
because the most famous. I worked in advertising for most of my life. The most famous,
really?
Yeah, the most famous iconic ad campaign out of Britain was probably the Levi's.
Yes.
And one of the most famous ads was Nick Cayman getting into the baths. And
absolutely.
Shrink to fit,
Yeah.
But it's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember. I mean, we will need to talk at some stage about the impact that the East had on your business and on all of this sort of manufacturing of clothes. But I do remember a story which was, they make a lot of the jeans now in India, in massive factories, sweatshops basically, and in China. And this idea that they would make a perfect pair of jeans and then they rip them up and destroy them. And the Indians are going, "What the fuck? I've just made a perfect pair of pants and you're wrecking them on me,
Oh, no, totally.
Those Westerners,
Yeah.
They've got holes in them.
Yeah. Those Japanese sort of purists, recreating the original 501s in the original styles. And because, 501 went through many variations
Design
in
changes,
style. But...
So the bands, so you had mods, as you just outlined. You had, I suppose, rockers and Teds. And to what extent did the clothes get found by the gangs, or did the clothes find the gangs, if you know what I mean? Because I remember there's a great story in a book called The Tipping Point about hush puppy shoes, which, as you know, are extremely ordinary and kind of Clarks-ish. But there was a band in a gang in Chicago in the sort of 80s or late 80s who were the start of rap and stuff like that. And they were looking for some fucking thing to wear that was going to make them give them an identity. And they picked this ridiculous, square, horrible pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And they just started buying them so that they would all wear them. And in fact, I don't think Hush Puppies realised why the spike in sales was happening. They were like, our advertising's working. There was one gang who went, we're going to wear those shoes. They're going to be our shoes.
Yeah.
Was that? Do you think it developed that way, or was it just pure chance? Or
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I mean, you were very influenced by what your peers were wearing. Even though you didn't want to look quite exactly the same, you wanted to look within that vein, certainly during the mod period. And I think that has been true right the way through, all these different kind of fashion movements. I remember doing a music video for Kanye West 10 years ago now, when he first started in Los Angeles. And we had these different kind of sinners, as it were, that we had to portray. And there was, prostitute, there was a down and out guy, and these gang bangers, basically, from the Crips and the Bloods, that sort of aspect. And I got talking to this one guy, this kid, who was a reformed gangster, and but he took me to this place in downtown LA where the kids all bought their clothes, and basically it was like a workwear company. And they all wore the same, different colours, but
they wore the jeans at half mast. Put your pants up, get a belt, mate.
And an old style of slipper they used to wear, like an old person's slipper, but they all kind of got into this whole look. So it was. I suppose it makes you stand out from other gangs or whatever, but it's a fascinating
and the basketball singlets and stuff like
that.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, do you spend a lot of your time trying to just keep on this wave?
Yeah,
you're decked out, and you're wearing, just for those who are listening, Converse. your U.S. Army Converse.
I got Converse, Dickies. Yeah. U.S. Army top. Yeah. T-shirt. I do a lot of research. I bought out a book last year called Rebel Threads.
Rebel Threads, you can find a link to it at the bottom of the podcast. Go buy it. It's a great book.
It's which traces the history of rebellion through clothing, basically, starting with the Zoot Suit riots in Los Angeles in the 30s and 40s, and going through to punk.
I think Zoot Suits need to be coming back soon.
Oh, they're the most amazing look.
Tremendous.
Yeah, there was a resurgence, I suppose. 1982.
Some of there was a new wave. Bands were
exactly.
Them,
Spandau Ballet and Blue Rondo à la Turk and the Beat. They used to wear them. In fact, one of the first bands I ever dressed was with a Beat, and a guy called Rankin Roger, who's just recently died.
I'm in demand. I am the Beat.
He was on the cover of a Face magazine, and I put him in a zoot suit.
The Face magazine just come back.
Face magazine's just come back. I haven't seen it yet.
Neither have I, but I used to buy it all the time. It was great.
Well, and I'm funny now. I'm just selling them all, buying all my collection.
I had a whole collection as well. I think I threw them out. And I had 8 years worth or something.
Oh God, yeah.
So your business was kind of osmotic, the way you kind of followed the money, I suppose, or followed the trends.
I think I just happened to be sort of in the right place at the right time. But then, of course, what happened was punk came along, 1975. Slowly but surely, my business started to drop off. Customers were like, we want this new punk look. We don't want, and so I got.
So we're drain pipes and kilts and.
Well, everything had to be black and zips and straps and
safety
what have you.
pins and.
So my partner and I started to buy army surplus stuff and have it done up with zips and straps and so on. But really, my art wasn't really in it, and. Because basically we were a bit too old to be punks, but we were still into that look.
But don't forget, Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren, I suppose, would be the two icons.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And it also just flared and went away, didn't it? Punk was a 2 or 3 year.
Yeah, well, no, and we tried to sort of capitalise on it. So we took on this shop in Covent Garden. Covent Garden at that time was a fruit and veg market. And that got relocated to Vauxhall. And so there was all these empty premises, and we took on a shuttered shop in there, and I designed the interior of it, and we called the shop PX. And we started to sell like German leather coats and riding boots and all black shirts. It was a bit of a fascistic look.
Yeah.
It got a lot of press, and it did rather well, but my heart really wasn't in being a shopkeeper. Besides, I got this warehouse full of stuff up in Leicester, this dead stock that I was trying to get rid of. So I went back on the road, and myself and my partner, doing Portobello Road and, desperately just trying to sell stuff off. And we had all this 60s stuff on Portobello Road one day, and this guy came by. He was looking for 60s stuff because they were just about to start a movie which was set in the 60s, and it was about mods.
Right.
And could we supply them? Cut a long story short, we got that was on the Saturday. By Monday morning, we got a contract to supply this movie called Quadrophenia. It was going to be financed by the Who, and it was all about mods. And we got to be the suppliers and also the like consultants on it. Great. Because nobody else was really that involved with the movement. And one of the first things they asked for was parkers. And we said, no problem. Yeah, we can get 150 parkers. What was great was we were able to sell everything to them. And we wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to buy it because they thought it was all going to get trashed in the fights and, in Brighton and in, people are going to be jumping in the sea and so on. Suited us fine, we'll take the money, thank you. Anyway, so they put an order in for 150 parkers. No problem, said I. Got ringing round my surplus dealers and stuff. Well, yes, we can supply you with the shells, but not the hoods.
Oh, they need the hoods.
Because the government, in their wisdom, had brought out a new ruling where any military clothing that was sold in Army Navy stores at that time could not look like the original garment. So it had to be stripped of any patches and regalia, insignia, and the hoods were removed. So after much research, I discovered that the hoods had all made their way to Belgium, and there was a dealer in Belgium that got all the hoods. There was various dealers here.
That was his livelihood.
Well, yeah.
We will pause for that joke.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, I managed to get together probably around 100 parkers from here and the hoods from abroad.
Stitched them back.
And we got these ladies to sew them all back together.
And let me guess, at the end of the movie, you said, "Can I buy them back off you for
well, not exactly
2 cents in the dollar?"
But what did happen was that the producers said, "What are you going to do now at the end of the movie?" And I said, "Well, we're just going to kind of go about, buying and selling." He said, "Well, why don't you buy back the stuff that didn't get trashed, and we can let you have it at half price or whatever."
I was going to say.
And maybe you should start a hire company. And I was like, "Well, I don't know anything about hiring. I mean, what But he was convinced that Quadrophenia was going to be a massive success. There was going to be loads of movies made about youth culture and so on and so forth. We might as well buy them back anyway if we can get them at a good price. And at that time there was a growing interest in this mod revival and so on.
I would have been.
So we thought we'd be able to kind of sell them to young up and coming mods. So we decided to form this company to supply film and TV after a bit of research, and called it a Contemporary Wardrobe Collection, and sent out flyers and information to all the film companies and TV companies. Everywhere we could think of, nothing. Didn't even get a response, nothing. No. So we basically just went back on the road buying and selling, and then one day this friend of mine called me up very excitedly. He said, "Oh, I've just been having a drink with Vivienne Westwood on the King's Road." This was like 1979. And he said they're just about to close their punk store down, Seditionaries, and change it into a new romantic puritanical sort of store. Yeah. And she'd loved what I'd done with the PX store, the design of that. And was I interested in meeting with them to talk about designing a shop for them?
Great.
Whoa, said I. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So, within a couple of days I met up with her and Malcolm McLaren, and we spent the day brainstorming. And came up with this idea of this crazy shop that was like the lilting deck of a ship, and with a clock going backwards like it was in a belfry or something, and it was going to be called World's End.
Right.
And it's still there on the King's Road today. Yeah. So I got the contract to do that, built the shop, and
did you come across a guy called John Whelans, who was an architect around that time?
Did. Now, John Whelans, how do I know
He designed
that name?
one of those. There was another big shop or store at that time.
Wasn't he involved with Mr. Freedom?
Mr. Freedom, that's the
yes,
one. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
He was an previous guest. He's a painter now. He's an artist.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Anyway, so by this time, another friend of ours, who was a writer, was absolutely astonished that we weren't doing more business hiring closeout. So she said, I'm going to write a piece about it and I'm going to punt it around and get you guys known, So
right.
She wrote this piece and she submitted it to the Sunday Times, and they accepted it, and we got a 5-page feature in the Sunday Times.
Wow.
From that moment, the phone slowly started to ring.
Right.
Mostly with photographers wanting to sort of recreate a book jacket or whatever, But then I did another shot, 1981, for Westwood and McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
This was called Nostalgia of Mud, and that was based in St Christopher's Place. I think it was at that shop I met this young film director called Julian Temple, who just made a film about the Sex Pistols called The Great Rock and Roll Swindle.
Yeah, famous film.
And he was very excited. He just signed with a production company to make music videos.
Right.
And I was asking him about
thing that no one saw.
what the music videos.
Yeah.
He said, they're like
MTV was launching.
Well, that's right, yeah. And was I interested in working with him, doing the clothes and doing the sets, and well, why not? Okay, fine. So I jumped in head first again, kind of not knowing what I was doing, but somehow managed to work it out.
Did you ever nearly go bust? No.
I did actually, a bit later on, very nearly went bust.
That was during the recession in the 80s.
That was in the recession in the 80s, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Everyone nearly went bust then, I think. Because actually, I'm looking at your career just as we talk about it, and you're just going, I'll do that, and it works. And, I'll do that, and it works. And, you could try that, and it works. I was wondering if there was a hurdle you knocked.
No, there was. No, definitely, And I've always tried to keep my overhead sort of pretty reasonably low, but yes, there was in fact, it was, what would it be, 85 or 86?
Yeah, around that. That's when I was starting trying to get work in Dublin, which was, it was really tough.
Time. I mean, up until that time, I was doing back-to-back music videos. I got involved with
Michael
movies,
Jackson
doing everybody under the sun. Never did do Michael Jackson as it happened, but the Stones, Bowie, everybody. I mean, we still do movies, and we still do TV commercials and photographic shoots, but mostly it's gone full circle, and it's now fashion again. It's all the fashion houses come here, from the lowest Topshop, Henny's, through to the highest, Louis Vuitton, Yves Saint Laurent, etc.
They come here to get inspiration.
Gucci. They come here to get inspiration.
I hope you charge them to come in the door.
We do, indeed. Yeah, they come. They take stuff away, and they take photographs, take patterns off them, look at them, and so on. But there have been some downtime.
And John Whelans is married to Natalie Gibson.
Oh,
she was the famous textile designer.
Yeah, that's right.
The Mary Quant and all that.
That's
sort of
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
She's still going strong in Central St. Martin's.
Really? Wow.
Great, like purple hair and everything.
Yeah. It's a small world.
I know. There must have been an impact in the giant that grew out of Asia. Cheaper, faster, less quality, copycats, all this kind of stuff. Did that affect your business, or?
Well, hiring wise, not really, because I always sort of, I was very interested in copies. I went through a whole period of just getting kind of designer rip-offs from, Hong Kong and those, in India and so on. And so I got very excited about those. A lot of that was kind of,
frowned upon
and stopped by the bigger companies.
I mean, I worked out there. I worked in China for 2 years.
Oh, really?
And I worked in Thailand, and I was out in Asia, all over Asia.
Right.
And it was great because, you go to Hong Kong back in the day, and there'd be, you had three kind of types of fakes. You had the fakes where they spelt the name wrong, right?
Yes, yeah.
Which were just no. But there was a huge market for them in Asia because they didn't realise the name was spelled wrong.
That's right.
Then you had the sort of good name spelled right copies, but poor quality.
Yeah.
You can see the glue on the handbag and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you had kind of some sort of out of the back of the factory copies, which was a thing. It was a black market. Oops, a box just fell out and someone's got them in a market and they're charging them. And they charged quite a lot for them. And there was a girl called Annie in Hong Kong Market who had a fake stand in Mongkok, and you go over to her, but you had to sort of say, she wasn't there, but there was a guy there, and you say, I'm coming to is Annie here? And if you said, is Annie here? You go through the back and out the back car park and across the street and down the road and into a high rise, and you go up to the 28th floor, and there's two apartments that have been knocked into each other, and you walk in and it's Aladdin's cave full of these things, that are actually back of a lorry kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And very good quality. We sort of mastered that when we were over there with gas.
But I love all that, all that kind of discovering things that are in the back rooms of places. I remember doing a film in New York in the 90s, a film called Hackers. One of the cast, Wendell Pierce, we shared this same love of jazz music, and he said, "You like jazz? I'll take you to some interesting haunts."
Great.
And I remember, this down on the Lower East Side, going through this like kebab store, through a door at the back of this kebab store, downstairs, through
into the
down
kitchen.
along,
I know the one.
through the, and like into this wonderment of kind of,
I know, speakeasy kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. Yeah,
that's quite famous. I mean, there was a load of those when I was living in New York. I lived there for 5 years or 6 years, and it was a load of those places. They were all cool, and whiskey now is the sort of thing to drink and all that. Everything's circular. One of the things I want to talk to you about is there? Well, let's just arbitrarily say the last 10 years, but probably a bit longer, and moving forward, I don't see ready cliques of fashion as much as I did. Is that fair or not?
Yeah, no, I think it is. It is very fair. Yes, it's a
blancmange. It's just kind of beige chinos. There's certainly no anarchy.
Oh no, absolutely
anymore.
not. No, I mean, that's the reason I finished my book in 1980 with the punk thing finishing. I think there are several reasons for this homogenized, look that's out there now, and one of the reasons was with those so-called style magazines like the Face and ID and Blitz that came along in 1980, championed this whole kind of revolution, what punk had kind of opened the doors for, this romantic new wave where basically you could dress in whatever you wanted to be, as long as you were dressing in something and being somebody. It was really promoted. There were so many different kinds of music and so on and so forth. However, as time went on, they were running out of ideas and there was nobody left to exploit. So they started these stupid barometers saying,
what's cool,
what's in and what's out and so on. And
I
think
done by some bell end in the newspaper who hasn't a clue. Probably.
Exactly, and I think kids got really kind of confused by this thing, and it's just like, well, I'm really into this look, but they're saying it's out and so on and so forth. I think they formed their own kind of death knell, basically. Certainly the Face, but I mean they got a bit obsessed with that whole what's in and what's out. Then along comes the internet, and all of a sudden you can be anything you want to be. There's nothing to shock anymore. There's no. Your parents are not shocked by anything. They've seen it all. I don't know.
And the younger generation, are starting to realise that we're leaving the planet in a fucking mess for them.
Yeah.
And they're going to have much more pressing priorities
absolutely.
than what clobber they're putting on them.
Yeah.
What about sustainability? Is that something that you're feeling in the business at all? Like that this idea that, reducing consumer spending, stop blowing money on stupid shoes and fashion, or will that always be there to a certain extent?
I don't know. I mean, they say it's it's an all-time high, isn't it? And sadly, because of the places like Primark and places that are just churning the stuff out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I was growing up, you valued your clothing. Yeah. You really you invested in it. Mm. Yes, there was always the kind of fast turnover boutiques, that were churning it out, and you were encouraged to buy something new every week, and it was, worn out, and you only wore it once, and so on and so forth. And much of my collection is based on that, actually. Stuff that should have been thrown away, should have worn out, but I've managed to preserve it somehow, and that's what interests me, rather than the sort of better made designer stuff. But today, it's just everything is so disposable. So in a way, I think my collection is doing a real service by it keeps being recycled in itself. Yeah. It's not, I'm not throwing it away, I'm not selling it, and it's become a historical archive now that is getting used by museums and being
housed in this wonderful listed building, which is very important as well.
Yes,
it's very important. Very important.
Yeah.
What was the movie then that you have your most pride in terms of when you look at it and go, I really got that right? Was there anyone that really stands out for you?
Well, it's actually Hackers. After all these years, I regularly get emails from people saying,
you want to look at
my God, you did Hackers. It was such an inspiration. In fact, this week I got an email from a lady in Queensland, and she said, when I saw that film, I'd never seen anything like it in a little town in Australia. It blew my mind.
I'm going to have to rewatch it now and just think about the clothing.
And it was mostly because they didn't have a massive budget for the clothing. They wanted it to be sort of now, but slightly in the future, but sort of recognisable. And I was sent on a recce to go and look at Hackers in New York, because that was when they were all kind of based, these hacker sort of conferences and so. And they were the most boring bunch of characters you could ever wish to see.
Slobs.
I thought, I've got to do something about this. And so I started to go around the East Village and, some of the clubs and stuff around there and look at kids who were into dressing up. And I mixed it with a bit of punk and a bit of 70s and a bit of 80s and a bit of 50s and mixed them all up, somehow gave it a look. Everybody seemed to love it, and of course, it was Angelina Jolie, one of Angelina Jolie's first films, and Johnny Lee Miller, and so on and so forth. But somehow it seems to have resonated with that
and it stayed
generation, and there's so much so. This group in America started a website called Hackers Curator, and they've interviewed pretty much everybody that was involved with that film. They've sent photographers here to photograph the clothes, because I still have a lot of them in the collection. And photograph them inside out and so on. And there's regular kind of screenings of it at the Prince Charles and so on. And I did a bit of a talk last year there, and it's just wonderful. It's like I don't know, it never seems to die, that movie. And also Quadrophenia, which is great as well.
An iconic legend.
Yeah.
So away from all what you do as your day to day, and we talked earlier about your idyllic memories of your childhood. Where do you see Britain today? I mean, the division, the thing. Do you think it's a real thing? Do you think Britain will get over it? How do you feel about it all?
I think we will get over it. Actually, I mean, I very feel like I've been sort of drowned in Brexit.
I can actually feel, because I come over and back, and I can feel this visit just get the fucking thing off the
Oh,
table. Like
Jesus,
people
I mean,
both sides are just fucking sick of the
exactly.
whole thing, you know?
I mean, I really, really don't care.
That's the
what
first time I
happens.
felt that, though.
Yeah.
Before I
sure,
felt
sure.
there was still a kind of a debate to be had.
Oh no, totally. Yeah, it's all like we just kind of like running around like headless chickens, and I'm afraid Boris is the king of the headless chickens in my book.
Same here, yeah.
But but whatever, let's just get this goddamn thing over and severed and get on with our lives. I mean, yes, of course it's going to have an effect, but who knows? We survived bloody World War II.
I was just going to say that about as an Irishman, and we have our problems with you guys. But, I would say, whatever it is, Britain has come through worse.
Absolutely. I mean, we're an island, for God's sake. We can take care of ourselves. It's not like...
I mean, I do. My personal thing is, I think Europe will be the worse for not having Britain in it, and I think Britain will be the worse for not being part of Europe, and I think that the way to save the planet is that we stop becoming nations and start becoming a human species.
Absolutely.
And we start looking after other species of human who are not so well off as ourselves or starving.
Totally.
And we fix the bloody climate thing and we stop giving all our money to big corporations just so that some rich people can blow it on cigars. I think that is a movement, I think, that is rumbling to a cinema near you very quickly, possibly with pitchforks and burning things.
Yeah.
But what would you say, this is my last question, I ask it to a lot of my guests, what would you say to the young boy who was only earning £2 a week on a farm? If you go back and talk into his ear and give him a bit of advice, what would you say to him?
Follow your dream. Just be strong and confident in your own self and just get out there and do what you want to do. Don't, life's very short. I'm beginning to realise that very rapidly now. I just was 70 last week, and it's just like, holy shit, where did it all go?
I'm 51 in July, and I'm like, all these people going, 70's the new 60, and 50's the new... I'm going, no, it's not.
No, it's not. But I am, so unbelievably fortunate in being able to have done what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of my life, and
they'll carry you out of here in a box, won't they? You'll keep going all the way.
Exactly, and I'm not going to give up now. No. Even just on principle, I'm not going to leave this place. So it's you just got to kind of stick with your own dream and just get out there, whatever your dream may be, just fulfill it.
Well, keep following your dream.
Yourself.
Roger Burton, thanks for being on my show.
My pleasure, thank you.
Love that.